This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not dispense medical advice. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health providers if you have any questions regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking such advice because of something you have heard on this podcast. Welcome to a show that we like to call Prostate Cancer Real Talk. Did you know that in the U.S., 1 out of every 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer during his lifetime? 1 out of 8. And black men are 50% more likely to develop prostate cancer in their lifetime and twice as likely to die from the disease. But hey, we're not here to quote statistics and tell you how tough prostate cancer can be. Rather, we are here to create a supportive community of survivors. A place where we can discuss the real-life coping methods from the perspective of a married couple who are living through it day by day. Our hosts, Elle and Shay. This is Prostate Cancer Real Talk. In this episode, you are not alone. We welcome Jim Straight. Jim is retired after practicing law for over 40 years, most recently as a partner at the Chicago law firm Scott & Krause. He holds a BS in finance from the University of Illinois at Urbana and a JD from Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. After a prostatectomy in 2010, at the age of 58, Jim attended the Us Two Gildas Club Chicago support group. There he became an active member and has led the group since 2014. Jim is committed to helping men and their partners with the physical and emotional problems resulting from prostate cancer treatment. We're very honored to have Jim with us today. So let's get to know more about him. Ellen Shay, take it away.
Thank you very much, Dennis, and welcome to Prostate Cancer Real Talk. Hello, Shay. How are you today?
I'm good, Elle. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. We're very pleased to welcome Jim Straight, who is a director at the Us Two Prostate Cancer Support Group. And Jim is going to share with us some inside information about support. The title of this particular episode of our show is called You Are Not Alone. And we're going to be talking to Jim about the organization that he is a proud member of. There have been some recent changes, exciting new changes at the group, which are designed to even further assist prostate cancer survivors and those who are finding themselves in, well, a friend that we had on the show called it the club that nobody wants to join. So welcome, Jim. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
So Jim, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself and your role with Us Two, and then we'll talk about the organization and some of the recent changes that have taken place. So kind of give us an introduction about yourself and your role at Us Two.
I think for almost all prostate cancer patients, it starts with their own story. And you've heard a little bit about mine already this morning, but I was diagnosed with prostate cancer at age 58 based on a rising PSA. This was discovered because I was seeing a urologist for kidney stones, and they did a PSA as part of their workup and that sort of thing. It was mostly low-grade disease and a very small amount. And when I initially got the news, I said, well, okay, that's nice. I'll see you in 6 months or a year. And they said, not so fast. And they argued that because of my relatively young age and life expectancy at that point, and because of the fact that even though it was low volume, there was some evidence of intermediate risk disease, that the only alternatives really for me were surgery or radiation. I asked a lot of questions of my urologist and ultimately my surgeon about the side effects and consequences of surgery and treatment. I don't feel in some instances that I got accurate information from them. And I went ahead and had the surgery when I was 58. And I found that the consequences, particularly the sexual consequences, were much worse than I had been led to expect. And this made me very angry, and I actually fell into a clinical depression that I didn't realize what was going on, because they don't typically warn you about the possibility of depression and some of the other things as a possible outcome of treatment. And I didn't realize what was going on until I became suicidal. Mm. And at that point, I went back to my surgeon, and we arranged for a mental health referral. And I got some medication, and I got some therapy, and that helped me a great deal. Somewhere in this process, I found my way to an US2 support group. It's the support group that meets in Chicago at Gilda's Club. And the people there were tremendously helpful to me in working through some of my issues. And I think, at least at that point, one of the really important things about that group was I was very angry. And when you're depressed and angry, it really is difficult for everybody who's around you. And at that point, my daughter was a senior in high school, and my wife, was also at home with us. And they just want things to get back to normal. They want things to be the way they were. And for the patient, a lot of times that's not possible. And so for me, at the outset, the support group was a place for that anger to go and to be expressed and listened to and really relieved to some extent. So that was my initial experience with the support group. And as time went on, working with other guys who were going through various difficulties with prostate cancer treatment and effects of treatment, I found that trying to help them allowed me to step outside myself a little bit and actually find healing through the process of helping other people. And I think it's probably at that point that I became a true believer in support groups and peer-to-peer support. I took over leadership of the Gilda's group. I think 2014 is about right. I'm not sure. The years kind of fly past at this point. And then I guess about 7 years ago, I became interested in being on the US2 board. So I applied for that board. I was elected to the board. And in December, I finished 6 years of service on that board. My last 2 years as chairman. And this year, I'm serving my final year as immediate past chairman.
What a great story. I mean, you went from depression to suicidal to the chairman and board member of US2, which is the support group to help people with prostate cancer, men and their families. Shay, what's your perspective from a wife's view on Jim's story, and how does that sync up with what some of the experiences that we had were? So,
Jim, I'm wondering, do you find other men, because this is extremely interesting. I don't think we've had any other guests that potentially was suicidal. So dealing with US2, do you find that other men share the experience that you had?
I'm finding that there's a lot more depression out there than is ordinarily thought. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've done at US2 since I've been on the board is to put some stuff on our website about mental health and depression, and trying to recognize symptoms, for example, of mental health issues, and get help, before it turns into suicidal thoughts. And that, I don't think we've dealt in group with anyone who was specifically suicidal, but we've dealt a lot with mental health issues that manifest in one way or another. And, anger is frequently one. And, for a while there at Gilda's, for actually quite a while, I was the angriest guy in the room. And, after that calmed down a little bit, Angry Man number 2 came along. And I was able to sit back and say, well, I've seen this movie. And I think we were able to give him some help.
I often wonder, like, you're married. And so with Elle, I just always try and have the role as a supportive wife and with encouragement. And he hasn't gotten to that point yet. So do you think that it's just some things that the wife, there's a level of, I guess I want to say the husband being angry and upset, there's just a point where the wife trying to console the husband it's just not going to work. And the husband will probably really, truly need therapy as well as medication. Because I'm always thinking I can fix it. If Elle is upset or, he's depressed. But I just always think as the wife, I can fix it. Do you think it's just a point where, hey, wives, you just can't fix this?
I think that point definitely exists. I enjoyed support from my wife and my family, particularly my son, who actually was at college at that point. I mean, we spent a lot of time on the phone, and I got a lot of support from him. I think sometimes it's harder for a wife or a child who's in the same household with the patient because, you've got your life going on. And what you really want is for things to get back to normal and get back to the way they were. And you want the patient to be healthy and cured and that sort of thing. And as time wears on and this anger continues or even gets worse, as it did in my case, I think that people around you, frankly, become fatigued. And it is difficult at that point to deal with it or to try to deal with it and help. And I think what happens in many of those cases, and was true for me, is, you just kind of bottle it up and try to cover up the anger and the depression. And I can say categorically that doesn't work. It just, it at the end of the day, I think it makes it worse. So I think it's wonderful to have that kind of support, but I think it doesn't always work, and I think it's very, very difficult in ways you might not imagine.
And so, as we're discussing this point, what's coming to my mind is the fact that we are reaching out to the men and their families who are going through this, who just may not know that there are other people like them. One of the experiences that I had was as I began to talk openly about the fact that I had had prostate cancer and had surgery or whatnot, one of the most surprising things to me was the number of men who said, oh yeah, I decided to go with radiation therapy, or I had that, process several years ago. I mean, you'd be surprised. Well, you wouldn't be surprised because you know this, but the fact of the matter is there are just so many guys that have gone through this or are going through this, and we just kind of keep it as a secret from each other. What are some of the things that we can do and say on this show to encourage guys, Jim, to just come out and seek help and just know that there are resources available to them? Because, guys, we have our pride, and there's certain things, particularly when you start talking about the impact on your sexual health and whatnot, it really becomes a in the closet kind of discussion. So what would you say to the guys out there who are listening that, may not be as open with their feelings as we are here today?
Well, I think, first of all, it's helpful if you can get some of that out. It goes back to what I said about a moment ago about keeping things bottled up inside. And I think there are a huge number of men that do just that. And I think that they're suffering because of that. The issues surrounding prostate cancer and its treatment are some of the most personal that a man can experience. I mean, nobody wants to stand up and say that I'm that guy with incontinence, I'm that guy with sexual dysfunction. I mean, it's just not something men really want to do. But the truth of the matter is, as you suggested a moment ago, there are a lot of people, a lot of men out there with those issues. And by going to a support group or joining an online virtual support group, you can talk with those guys and you can learn about how they're coping, and you can have an outlet to express what's going on with you. And I think, the face-to-face support groups are a big challenge, I think, for people. I mean, I think there's huge value to face-to-face support groups, but there are a lot of guys out there that just can't get there. And one of the things that the pandemic has taught us, the pandemic and some of the work of ANCAN, Answer Cancer Foundation, with virtual support groups, is that they are a good entry point to the support system, because you can join a virtual group by Google, you can hide your picture, you can change your name, you can be completely anonymous. So you can go and you can listen, and when you choose to, and when you think it's going to help you, then you can talk. And one of the other things that you learn in that process in the support group, either virtual or face-to-face, is that, you may be able to come up with something to say to somebody that's going to help them. And if you can reach that point, then you're going to find healing with some of your own issues.
For more information on our guest and all of our Prostate Cancer Real Talk guests, you can go to our website, prostatecancerrealtalk.com. That's prostatecancerrealtalk.com.
So, Jim, of course, I'm always coming from the wife's perspective. So with your depression, when you were, initially diagnosed and after your surgery, did you think that perhaps, or did you and your wife maybe have to go to marital counseling? Did you notice that it was a strain on the marriage because, just being upset, angry, depressed?
Yeah, I think it was creating a strain, but, we did not pursue couples counseling.
Okay, because we've had a therapist on, and you just hear so many different stories because of, unfortunately, it does. Some people have sexual issues much longer than others, and potentially it causes problems in the relationship. And I just always like to say that, to me, I don't know, maybe a newly married couple, maybe have a more challenging time with that. But, we've been married for some years. And so to me, it was more, our marriage and our relationship was more about physical intimacy in terms of sex. I mean, I look at intimacy in so many different ways, but we're hearing that it's a big issue for a lot of couples. Do you hear that come up perhaps in the Us Two support group?
We do. We do. And we don't hesitate to recommend couples therapy. And we know of some people who do this and do a good job with it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really work for everybody.
Right.
I mean, I think that, the primary maybe impediment is that both partners need to be willing to do it.
Yes.
And that isn't always the case. And, I think it is difficult to communicate. And if a couple is experiencing poor communication about matters of intimacy and that sort of thing before this disease and before treatment, I think that those difficulties just expand exponentially after treatment.
So, we've heard several times during our conversation, we've mentioned Us Two. Could you just tell us just a little bit more about the resources that are available through Us Two? And also some changes occurred this week. There was a merger that took place between us two and a company called Zero. So could you tell us a little bit more about the resources that are available through us two, and also about this news that just happened with the merger?
Us Two has been around now for 30 years. It was founded by four guys, including the late Dr. Gerald Chodak, who was at University of Chicago at the time. And it was a group that got together to support one another through prostate cancer treatment and survivorship. Since that time, it's grown to the point where we now have a fairly loosely affiliated network of about 200 support groups nationwide. And, we produce the support groups, we support them. We have monthly support group leader conference calls where we can bring in support group leaders, and we have education programs for them and that kind of thing. So we support the local chapters. The other thing that we have is a comprehensive website with a number of topics relating to prostate cancer, as well as an index of support groups so that you can find one that's near to you. Historically, the Us Two support groups have been face-to-face groups. In the last year, many of them have gone to virtual. I actually facilitate two support groups in Chicago, the one that meets at Gilda's and one that we started, it's coming up on 2 years ago now at Northwestern. And we are meeting virtually. And, we're trying to learn something from that. And I think what we're learning is that just a couple of things. First of all, it's easier for some people to participate virtually, so you can reach a potentially larger audience. And the second thing is that the virtual approach eliminates all the transportation and location barriers. So I think what we're looking at as we go forward is trying to bring back the face-to-face groups and keep a virtual component. At least that's what we're talking about, and what I'm personally recommending. It might be a good thing for me to say at this point, and forgive me, I practiced law for 40 years. The opinions and that sort of thing that I'm expressing here today are my own. Mm-hmm. They're not opinions on behalf of Us Two, Zero, Northwestern, or anybody that I'm involved with. It's really my own opinions, and I don't want there to be any misunderstanding about that.
Well, just to make you feel a little bit more comfortable, we opened the show with a disclaimer that was written by our attorney. So we're all set in that area. All right,
that's good. I think some of the other things that Us Two does is we sponsor the Inspire site, which is an online community of, in this case, for prostate cancer patients. Inspire is also available for other diseases and other kinds of cancer, but we're really the exclusive sponsor for prostate cancer. And it's very valuable. If you have questions, you can input your questions and have them answered by other patients. And there's kind of an open online discussion. The issue that I sometimes have with it is it's not a moderated site. So the information that you get is not filtered, and you need to be careful sometimes how you use that information. Nonetheless, it's a tremendous resource for a lot of guys. So we sponsor that. We have a website. We typically, in the course of a year, will have face-to-face educational programs. Once again, that's been changed in the last year, and we're doing webinars. We have a series going on this year that's really involved in making individualized treatment decisions. That's going very well. We've partnered with Answer Cancer Foundation on various webinars. So that, just as a thumbnail sketch is what we do. I mean, the support groups are really our claim to fame. We have a website that's informational. We work with other prostate cancer organizations, and we have the Inspire site. That's kind of in a nutshell. For many of us, it's long been a belief that there are perhaps too many prostate cancer organizations out there. And there are perhaps too many organizations that are saying sort of the same or similar things in a different way. And we felt that by bringing these organizations together, you can create a stronger voice for the patient with the research and research funding community, and equally important with the medical community. That at us too has led to some discussions over the last few years about merging the organization. So I won't bore you with all the background of that, but we have entered into a letter of intent, which was announced last Thursday, to merge with Zero.
Last Thursday's date, we're talking about April of 2021.
Yes, it was April 22nd. Was the announcement. And Zero is an organization, and I'm probably going to be off here. I think they are 25 years old. And Zero grew up historically as raising money and doing lobbying for research funding. So, for example, they're very active in supporting congressional appropriations for prostate cancer research. And that historically has been their space. And they do a very good job of turning patients into advocates for better research funding and better treatment of this disease. As part of that, they have a website as well, and they have educational programs, including a summit, which is in January or February of each year, where they bring people together and teach them about advocacy and prostate cancer and that sort of thing. So as time wore on, it became kind of a natural thing for them to be more involved in direct patient services and support. And through that, they've had groups that have come together. They have a series of races, foot races nationwide, where they raise money, once again, primarily for research and that kind of thing. So discussions started last November about, whether it made sense to combine our two organizations and have one comprehensive organization that was addressing advocacy and education on that side of the spectrum, as well as direct patient support. We quickly concluded that this was a good thing to do, that by combining our organizations, we'd have a broader reach, a deeper reach in the patient community. I think one of the other things that we really liked about Zero is they have a physician advisory board, which is something we were really in the early stages of trying to form at us too. And their board, their physician advisory board, brings a medical perspective to what they're doing, and also enhances credibility of the patient organization with the medical community, which I personally believe is essential, because I don't think you're ever going to change and improve the treatment of this disease by just talking to patients. You need to identify that patient voice and bring it to the clinician and research community. So I think that this merger with Zero provides us unique opportunities to do exactly that.
Great.
We're very excited about it. I think maybe just a final point, for a patient and in patient recovery, empowerment is a very important thing, and taking charge of your own life. And advocacy is a piece of that. Making a difference and working with others to make a difference to increase research funding is just such a natural fit in the healing process that I'm very excited about the possibility, the opportunities that we're going to have to do exactly that.
You mentioned that some people said there are just too many outlets out there for prostate cancer support. Actually, when Elle first got diagnosed and after his procedure, we were so unaware of these support groups. And that was kind of why we started the podcast. I don't know what we were missing or how we didn't find them, but I'm so glad that you're on our podcast, and so everyone can know now. But Elle and I, we Googled so many things, and it was just so much information that we could not find. Again, I don't know how we missed it, but I'm happy that we're part of Us Too now in terms of having you on. We've had other members from the organization on as well, and you guys are doing really great things, and I'm just so grateful for you guys.
You know, just because you are an excellent urologist and a world-renowned surgeon, not you personally, but, you know, just because an individual may be a world-renowned surgeon and a great urologist, it doesn't mean that they're the world's best communicator, okay? And so everybody doesn't communicate with other people the same way. And regardless of your medical expertise and whatnot, to me, there's no better person to tell you about this experience than somebody who's gone through it themselves. They can offer you perspectives that don't necessarily come up through your conversations with your doctor. That's, again, another mission that we have here, and that is to put people in touch with real patients and people that have gone through this. And another one of our missions is to, as we say in the theme of this show, You're Not Alone, to just make sure people know that there are resources available to them through Us Too, and it's now Partner Zero through our podcast. And again, if you go to our website, you will get all of the information about how to contact Jim and the rest of our guests and organizations. So as we conclude today's discussion, Shay, what are your final thoughts and, you know, your comments about today's guest, Jim, and what we've discussed so far?
Now, I'm really excited and glad that Jim was on, and because, you know, as Jim, I'm sure Elle probably mentioned to you, he had his surgery done at Northwestern by an amazing surgeon. And, you know, it was a tremendous outcome. But it wasn't until, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months after surgery that we discovered that Us Too, that was a part of a support group through Northwestern. We had no clue. So I think the one thing that I'm getting out of today's show is that perhaps if urologists, like maybe like a little pamphlet or just something pretty inexpensive to, you know, give to patients, like you said earlier, after being diagnosed, like, you know, a little pamphlet on yes, Us Too, you know, or perhaps Prostate Cancer Real Talk, a place where the patient can go and listen or get information prior to making the decision on radiation or surgery or what have you. So I think that's what I got out of today's show, because we didn't have that option. And Elle is well pleased with having had surgery, but I just think that there should be some support, as you mentioned, pre-surgery. And
I'm going to give you the same opportunity, Jim, that I just gave Shay, to kind of recap your thoughts for today and today's show, and any thoughts that you'd like to leave with our listeners.
Well, I think a couple things. I think patient or peer support is tremendously important for a number of the reasons that, Elle, you've suggested. You really need to talk with someone who's been through it to develop your expectations and that sort of. And then once you get through treatment, you really don't know what's going to happen. Some people have a very good outcome, some less so. But there are ways of coping with that are not in the medical books. And part of that is just having a place to go and talk about it when everyone around you is, you either can't talk to them or they're tired of hearing it. So I would say, I guess, 2 things. Reach out to the support organizations, learn all you can about your treatment decision, and don't be bashful about seeking support.
Again, we are here as a communications community. We are here to facilitate a dialogue among people who have joined, like Dave Housen told me a couple weeks ago, have joined this club that nobody wants to belong to. But we are here, and we have great tools to help each other, this podcast being one of them. And so we just want to encourage people to know the fact that you are not alone if you're facing this challenge.
Jim, thank you so much. It was so awesome having you. I look forward to more conversations and more great things with the Us Too organization. Thank you so much for being part of Prostate Cancer Real Talk.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's tremendously important, and I think you found a gap really in what's out there, and that's good.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Thanks all.
To find out more information on the guest you just heard or previous guests and a list of Prostate Cancer Real Talk episodes, visit our website, prostatecancerrealtalk.com. And if you have a question, comment, or if you would like to share your story, send Elle and Shay an email, ellandshay@prostatecancerrealtalk.com. That's LEL and Shay, SHAY, @prostatecancerrealtalk.com.